All right, fifth graders, we have some time, so we're going to preview chapter 6, which is called Swedish Creams and Welfare Cheese. And questions that we're going to ask ourselves as we're reading. Let's just look at the first one. Why do you think Byron gets sick after he kills the mourning dove? All right. We're going to start here with Mama. Mama stuck her head into the living room and said, Byron, I want you and Kenny to go up to Mitchell's and get some milk, a loaf of bread, and a can of tomato paste for dinner. She waved a little piece of paper at us that had the grocery list written on it. How come Kenny can't go by himself? Byron, I want a half-gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, and a small can of tomato paste. If you asked Mama why you had to do something and she didn't feel like explaining, she just repeated herself. She was chopping up onions for spaghetti sauce, and I guess the tears made it so she didn't feel like talking. If you were stupid enough to ask your question again, there would be the loudest quiet in the world coming from Mama. If you went totally crazy and asked the question a third time, you might as well tie yourself to a tree and say, Ready, aim, fire! Byron got the message and jerked up off the couch and walked over to the TV and punched the off knob. I knew this wasn't going to be a fun walk up to Mitchell's. We went into the kitchen. Give me the money. Just sign for it. Just what? Just tell Mr. Mitchell you want to sign for it. Mama kept whacking the onions. What, just go in there and tell Mr. Mitchell I want to sign for some food? Your daddy and me made all the arrangements last weekend, Byron. Mr. Mitchell will let us sign for groceries until payday. Lots of people do it. A half-gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, and a small can of tomato paste. Mama started chopping the onions a little harder. So I ain't got to give him no cash? Whack, whack, whack. All of a sudden, Byron's face jumped like a bell went off in his head. Wait a minute, I know what this means. We on welfare, ain't we? I held my breath. If I found out we were on welfare, I was going to really have to get ready to be teased. No, we're not on welfare. And fifth graders, I'm going to stop right there. And just for those of you who don't know what welfare is, when you don't have enough money to be able to buy food or clothes or the things that you need to live a healthy life, the government will give assistance. And so it's not like the government is just giving you cash and you can use it how you want, but oftentimes the government will give you, they're what are called food stamps. You can go to a grocery store and you can buy certain products or certain items with help from the government. And it's oftentimes something that people feel ashamed of. And we can see that here where even though it's sometimes people just sometimes life throws hardballs at you and there is not anything that you can do about it. And so it's maybe not something that Kenny should feel ashamed of, but we can see here that he says, if I find out we're on welfare, or if I found out we were on welfare, I was going to really have to get ready to be teased. So something that he feels ashamed of and worried about, even if it's not something that he can control. All right. I can't believe it. You really going to start serving welfare food in this house? You really going to make me go embarrass myself by signing a welfare list for some groceries like a blang peon? I'm not sure about the words blang peon, but I think it definitely has a negative connotation. I guess Bai hadn't been counting how many times Mama had repeated herself. She smacked the knife on the kitchen counter and jumped right up in Bai's face. Listen here, Mr. High and Mighty, since you just got to know food is food. You've eaten welfare food in this house before, and if need be, you'll eat it again. Don't come playing that nonsense with me. I already told you this is not welfare food. You've got about 5 seconds to have that door hit you in the back. Can he move? Bai pouted and walked real fast up to Mitchell's, so I had to kind of run along to keep up with him. He didn't say anything while we got the stuff Mama wanted. He just snatched the things off the shelves. Then he dropped the bomb on me. You go get in line and hold our spot. I'm gonna look at some comics for a minute. When you get up to the register, I'll come and tell him how we gonna pay. Oh man, I knew what that meant. But I'd figure out a way not to get embarrassed. He was going to hide until after I'd signed for the groceries. I was going to be the one who got embarrassed. I couldn't argue or anything, so now it was me who was pouting. Byron disappeared around the comic book rack. Hi, Kenny. Hi, Mr. Mitchell. This all you want? Uh-huh. He took the groceries and rang them up on the cash register. That's $1.23. I saw Bai's head come peeking around the comics. This has got to go on the welfare list, I said, kind of quiet. Mr. Mitchell twisted his face up. On the what? I said real low so only Mr. Mitchell could hear. We just found out we got put on welfare and we got to sign this food up on the welfare list. Byron's head disappeared again. Mr. Mitchell laughed. Kenny, this isn't a welfare list. It just means your daddy's going to pay all at once instead of a few times a week. Really? Mr. Mitchell reached under the counter and opened up a little brown box. He pulled out a bunch of yellow cards, and I could see Watson was written on the top of one of them. He wrote $1.23 on the first line and said, "Sign here," then pointed to a spot next to the $1.23. I wrote Kenneth Watson and gave him back the pen. That's it. That's it. He put the groceries in a brown paper bag and handed them to me. See you, Mr. Mitchell. The second I walked out of the store, Byron was next to me, and he was in a lot better mood. Man, I can't believe it. We just had a chance to get a bag full of free food, and all we took was some stupid milk, a loaf of bread, and a can of tomato sauce. Byron's good mood started getting to me, too. He was smiling and even put his arm around my shoulder as we walked. I couldn't help myself. It felt so grown up to have By walking with me like that. I started laughing right along with him. His mood was so much better that he even took the bag of groceries from me. Most of the time when Mama made us go to Mitchell's, Byron would make me carry the bags from the store right up to the front porch. Then he'd take them from me so Mama would think he carried them the whole way. Now he started carrying them 4 blocks away from home. This is just too much. All you gotta do is sign that stupid card and that old fool Mitchell will give you what you want. Too much. Now that By was happy, I had 2 questions I wanted to ask him. First, he'd said a word that I'd never heard before, and since he said it in front of Mama, I knew it wasn't cussing. As we walked home with his arm around my shoulder, I thought I might get a real answer from him. Byron, what's a peon? A peon? Didn't you see the Magnificent Seven? Peons was them folks what was so poor that the rich folks would just assume pee on them as anything else. I knew this had to be a lie. You could get yourself in a lot of trouble if you listened to half the stuff Byron said. But I asked my next question anyway. What do you think the welfare food was that Mama said she gave us? I wish I hadn't asked, because this brought back his bad mood. He took his arm from around my shoulder and said, I know what it was. He handed me back the groceries, too. Don't you remember how some of the time Dad sneaks up in the morning and goes in the kitchen and then he comes out, there's a big jug of milk? Ain't you ever wondered where that milk come from? You ever seen any udders on Dad? That milk come out of one of them big brown boxes they keep up on them high shelves, pure D welfare food. And don't you remember that cheese? Who ever heard of cheese coming in a box as big as a loaf of bread? You ever try to pick one of them things up? Real cheese comes in hunks or slices, not no blamed loaf that weigh 40 pounds. I always thought there was something strange about that mess, and now I know. She been sneaking us welfare food, pure D welfare food. The cheese tasted okay to me, except for a big powdery lump every once in a while. Dad's milk was all right too, but to try to get Byron back into his good mood, I acted real disgusted and said, "Aw, man." A week later, I was walking in the alley behind Mitchell's when a big cookie with pink frosting just about hit me in the head. It went by like a little flying saucer, then crashed in the dirt. I looked all around and didn't see anybody, so I put my hands over my face and stood still because I knew if something weird like this happened once, it usually happened again. Sure enough, another cookie hit me right in the back, and a big laugh came out of the green apple tree. Byron. He dropped out of the tree like a superhero. He had a great big bag of cookies in one hand and a green apple with a giant bite out of it in the other. Want some? By tipped the bag of Swedish cream cookies at me. I knew this was a trick. The bag must have been empty, but I looked inside anyway. There was still a half a bag of cookies. Thanks. I grabbed 2 of the cookies and looked at them real good in case By had put bugs or something on them. They were clean, but I still kept waiting for the trick. Why would Byron waste 4 good cookies on me? Man, Swedish creams have got to be the best cookies in the world. I gulped them down and wiped my hands on my pants. I couldn't believe it. By tipped the bag at me again. He jumped up and snatched a green apple off the tree, checked it for wormholes, then handed it to me. You best eat some of this. Them Swedish creams is good at first, but they kind of get thick in your throat after a while. Byron was being too nice, so I knew something bad was about to happen. Then I noticed a crumpled up Swedish cream spag on the ground next to the tree, and I could figure out why he was being so generous. He'd already eaten a bag and a half. A bell went off in my head. I knew now why he'd been so excited and happy when he found out about getting free food at Mitchell's. Vi was signing up for stuff that Mama and Dad didn't even know about. It was like he read my mind because I was just about to say, ooh, bye, when he stopped being friendly and crossed his eyes at me and said, don't even think about it, Poindexter. You ate 2 of them yourself, so quit wasting my cookies and just shut up and enjoy what's left. He tipped the bag at me again. He had me. I couldn't tell on him, or else I'd be in just as much trouble as he would. I took another one. Vi bent over the green apple tree and slid his back against it until he was sitting down. I did the same thing right next to him, and we sat together munching. Okay, I think we'll stop there. We didn't get to answer this question, but we'll have it in our minds for the next time we read together. Um, this is sort of a moral dilemma. Maybe one question that we can ask ourselves: if your brother or sister, or let's say somebody you knew, was using an account to buy cookies and doing that without asking permission, would you tell on them? Would you just make good friends with them and hope that they'd share their cookies? The disappointing part, the part that is tricky, is that Byron's parents are still going to have to pay for this food, and they might not have the money to pay for things like Swedish cookies, Swedish creams. So we'll see how that works out next time we come back together to read.